I love doing this, man.
Yeah.
This is the best thing in the world to wake up in the morning and look at your calendar. Like, what am I doing today? You're like, man,
Podcast.
I'm just having a conversation.
Yeah,
I'm
dude.
just gonna go to work and have a cup of coffee and talk with Bridger.
Yep.
And so welcome, man.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on the podcast today, man. Is this is the my favorite type of podcast we do is just MA guys sharing their war stories.
Hmm.
And I know that we were just talking about what would we title this podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know what titles it's going to come out with, but I like the way you said it. What was it?
Purpose in the pain.
Purpose in the pain.
Yep.
And so yours is a story that I think so many men go through, so many men have and battle, and they're not talking about it the way you are. So tell us about your story, brother.
All right. I'll try to give you a condensed version. But basically,
You don't have to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So,
Give us the long one.
basically, I'm a guy. I grew up in a great home my whole life. I grew up in Suffolk, Virginia, on a bunch of acreage. Grandparents lived right down the lane on the lake, and mom and dad both super God-fearing individuals. Grew up in the church. Really had nothing wrong in life. Never really struggled. If I'm being completely honest, like everything kind of came easy to me in life. I did really well in school. I did really well in sports. I had scholarships to go play multiple sports in college. A lot of success just growing up that just kind of came naturally. I mean, I put in work to get to get the results that I wanted, but I never really struggled. You fast forward. I went to JMU. When I got out of JMU, I moved here, and I was actually a teacher. So I was a middle school health and PE teacher. I was coaching a high-level strikers soccer team. I was running my own company, so a soccer training company with one of my best friends at the time, and that blew up. And I had everything going for me, right? All the success in the world, beautiful wife, awesome son, had a daughter on the way. But I don't even think I realized it at the time, but I was so empty on the inside. And I think that all these things I was chasing, success, just the accolades of being like the best coach, the best teacher. I actually taught your son at Tomahawk.
Yeah.
And so I just chased accolades, man, and it didn't give me anything. And so I think on the inside I was really just hurting and didn't even know. And I think it was stressing me out pretty much to a breaking point. And I didn't even realize the warning signs. And I was not living for the Lord by any means. I grew up in a Christian home, believed in God, but just prayed when I wanted to.
When you needed something, probably.
Yeah, prayed when it was kind of convenient for me. Still went to church, Tara and I have been going to the chapel for, probably 12 years now. I was going to church, but dude, I was textbook faking it. Showed up. I could say all the right things. I could lead the groups. I could attend the groups, but I was not walking the walk. Behind the scenes, there was a lot of lust. There was a lot of alcoholism. There's a lot of just doing whatever I could, to be honest with you, to avoid home. Avoid my wife, avoid my kid, because I just did not know how to cope with those responsibilities. So you fast forward to May 17th, I believe, 2021. And it was the day after my Strikers coaching season had ended. My whole life just went, whew. It just flipped upside down. The thing I remember from that day is not feeling good enough was the thing that kind of triggered it. I remember, I had to cut some kids from teams, and their parents had dragged my name through the mud on Facebook, and I was so driven by accolades that just crushed me. And I remember going to the gym that day, and I was just ruminating, like, man, I'm not good enough. I poured everything I had into these kids, and I'm just not good enough. And that's when my first panic attack ever happened. And it is your textbook panic attack story. I think I'm dying. Ambulance, hospital. They run all the tests.
You were in the
Gym.
You were in the gym.
I actually drove home. And then when I got home, I told Tara, I was like, something's wrong. My whole left side's numb. I can't breathe. I'm like starting to black out. I need you to take me to the ER.
So you having like that real rapid, short breathing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
did you have chest pain?
Oh, yeah. I thought I was having a stroke or a heart attack.
Yeah.
Because my entire left side went numb. And it started, I thought it was like low blood sugar or something. And then it was left side went numb, super dizzy, kind of tunnel vision. Heart was just pounding. I couldn't breathe. I felt like my esophagus was just closing up. End up going to the ER, whatever. Told I have a panic attack, go home. So you speed things up. These panic attacks are continuing nonstop. I mean, they're lasting all day long. And it won't go away. And I'm like, I'm dying. There's something wrong with me. So what anyone would do, it was not my first instinct to turn to the Lord. I went to the doctor. And I went to my primary care, and she said, well, Corey, we've got two options. Option one, you can try to seek some counseling. Let's see if you can't get to the root of this. Or option two, you can try medication. And I think that was the first opportunity that God was like, I'm giving you two choices here. Which one are you going to choose? Are you going to choose counseling, which was probably the right option, but was going to take longer? Or are you going to take the fast option? And I said, give me medication, because all I could think about in my head was, I got to get back to my life.
Yeah. You weren't thinking about making any lifestyle changes.
No.
Like right away.
No, none.
Yeah,
I just want to get back to what I need to do.
Yeah.
Living my life. I didn't really know anything about meds, and this is my story, so I'm not trying to like shy people away from meds or anything, but you fast forward for 2 years, man. I saw every specialist. I had every MRI, heart MRIs, brain MRIs, scans. I've seen every doctor you can imagine. I've seen ADHD specialists, shout out doc. I've seen functional medicine doctors, cardiologists, neurologists, I'm forgetting a ton. I've tried all different types of therapy. I've tried EMDR. I've tried neurofeedback, you name it. And I've been trialed on probably 20 different medications from every classification you can imagine. So from an antidepressant to an antipsychotic to a mood stabilizer to ADHD medication to supplements. Nothing touches it.
SSRIs, SRNIs.
Oh yeah,
You've tried them all.
NDRIs, all of them.
Yeah, and this has been a long journey.
Yeah,
like all this stuff you're listing.
Years.
Yeah, years. You didn't try this stuff all at once or quickly, and each one of these things takes time.
Yeah.
Every single one of the things you've tried, it had its ramp up period, its taper period, right? Yeah. It's like, I just want people to understand the process here.
It is definitely a process, and I'll get into this later as to like why I want to help guys, but it's like none of them work for me. For me personally, it all just made things worse. Mm. So I'm talking, and I'm still not out of the weeds, right? So you fast forward, I've gone through all that, nothing working, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to get off meds, because if I feel bad on meds and off meds, well, I'd rather not have anything extra in my system if I don't need it. So about a year, I don't know, maybe close to a year and a half ago, I got off all the meds and still struggling. And I remember in January, it was bad. I was really struggling with depression. I remember a text went out to Iron sent out a text to a ton of MA guys.
I remember the day.
Praying for me, because I was having such a bad day with depression. I mean, so bad. And, throughout all this time, man, I can't tell you how many hundreds of times I've hit my knees praying to God. My prayer life has developed into something I can't even explain. I pray all day long now, and just praying, God, why? How do I get out of this? Show me what to do. And it's just been, He's just allowed me to stay in this suffering. And so that day that, Iron put out that text, hey, please pray, Corey's really struggling with suicidal thoughts and just horrible depression. He's got a family and a wife. He doesn't want to leave this earth. You know what I mean? But he just needs help. And I will never forget that same day at 6:30 at night. So one of my best friends lived right beside me, and he had been coming to another men's group at the chapel that I lead with Iron. He had gone through Freedom, just, a guy working through his own struggles, battling his own vices, battling his own relationship issues. And his dad's actually my next door neighbor, so he was living with Dad during the time. And this was the first time, maybe not the first, but the first real close encounter, because he was right next door, where I would see him every day, where God was like, mentor this guy. You can relate to him because he's struggling with anxiety. He's struggling with depression, maybe not to the same degree, but mentor him. Tell him things that you've done that have helped, and get him connected with other men. And so I grew really close. His name was Jackson. I grew really close to him in a year's time. And so to circle back, that same day where I was having the worst depression of my life, that night at 6:30, I'll never forget, my wife was rocking my daughter in her room to bed, and I was playing a game with my son in his room, and my phone rings, and it was his dad. His dad's like my dad's age, and he's like the greatest human in the world. I love the guy with my whole heart, literally. He's like a father figure to me. He's a grandparent to my kids. And so he calls me all the time. Hey, Corey, can you come help me move this in my garage? Whatever. I try to help him out.
Yeah.
So he calls me at 6:30, which is nothing out of the ordinary. I answer the phone. Hey, Mark, what's up, man? And it sounds like, he's from, he's here and his phone's across the room. So he sounds far away.
Yeah.
And I can just hear him tapping on something. And he's like, Jackson, wake up. Jackson, wake up. Jackson, wake up. And I was like, oh, man. He's like, Corey, I need you to come over right now. And I was like, okay. So I hang up, tell my wife, Tara, I got to go next door. It was 20 degrees outside. I was in shorts, I bolted across the yard, barefoot. And I walk in to the house, and I turn, and I look down the hallway, and there is my friend. His head is through the wall in the bathroom. Blood everywhere. His knees are on the ground. Head is through the wall. And, I had been dealing with terrible depression that day, but I was just my first aid instinct just kind of took over. Mark, we got to, I don't want to trigger anybody by saying anything, but we essentially got to get him on his back, arms by his side, first aid. So we're doing first aid on him. Long story short, one of my best friends dies in me and his dad's arms right there. I watch him die in my arms. And I can remember in that moment just walking around his dad's house, and I just started praying out loud. I didn't care who was there. Paramedics were coming. Cops were coming. I was just praying. I think I was praying in tongues. I mean, it was just coming out of me. And I remember the Holy Spirit. The first person I called was Iron, and he sent out another text. Dude, we got to pray for this guy. He's unconscious. I remember praying with his dad in his room, and long story short, that event happens, and I can just remember, laying in bed that night, looking at the ceiling, telling my wife, does God hate me? You know what I mean? I was like, he says he will not give us more than we can bear. And I was like, but I was already dealing with what I felt like more than I could bear. And now this gets poured on top of it. And so you add to depression and anxiety I've been going through for 4 years now. We've got PTSD, which is a whole nother bear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
serious.
Experiencing.
That's a traumatic event, man.
Yeah. And just experiencing in that moment, man. And I know I've shared this with you and some other guys I know, I've never felt evil so close to me in my life. I felt
really?
I literally felt like I was nose to nose with Satan himself.
In that house.
I felt like he was like a snake, literally just slithering around. I just felt like he was right here. Just like, I took out your friend and you're next. That's just what I felt. I'm coming for you next. And so I'm still battling through this today. But I remember, the week after that, as I was preparing what I was going to say at Jackson's funeral and all these things, I remember laying on my couch in tears one day, just praying. And I was like, God, what are you trying to teach me? What are you trying to teach me from this? And if I backtrack a little bit, I had gone to the Ignite Men's Conference 2 years ago, and they were offering mental health coaching certifications for like $50. 3 college courses through Light University to get certified. And I did the certifications. Me and Iron and Spur did them. And I remember I told God, I'm going to shelf this idea. I felt this calling. I mean, I told you, I was meeting with you probably the first year of all this. I was like, I just feel like God's maybe calling me to get into counseling or something.
Yep.
And I said, God, I'm shelving this because I do not feel good enough physically or mentally to do this. I cannot do it. And I remember laying on that couch that day saying, God, what are you trying to tell me through what I'm going through? And I heard it so clearly in my head. The Lord said, it is time to take that idea off the shelf and go with it. It's time to go. And he said, and you need to get trauma certifications, because now you have experience with trauma and grief and loss, and I want you to start coaching guys. And so I remember in that moment, I was like, how? I feel awful. I'm dealing with horrible anxiety and depression and trauma myself. There's no way. I can barely peel myself off the couch every day. And he's like, bluntly, I kind of feel like the Lord told me, it doesn't matter. I'll be with you. Just get up and start pursuing it. So I started taking more classes, and I got master's diplomas in trauma-informed care and grief and loss and mental and spiritual health and mental and behavioral disorders. So I think I've accumulated like 10 now. And then I remember I came and had a conversation with you because I was struggling so bad with the trauma that I needed somebody, honestly, man, to just come cry to. And we were sitting in here, and I ran the idea by you. I was like, Goose, like, I know you're kind of phasing out of coaching because you're really focusing on planting tribes and carry the fire. And you told me, you're like, man, this has been on my heart for a while.
Yeah.
And you're like, maybe this is the nudge I needed. I'm going to talk to the MA board and I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about kind of what that's spawned into.
That's exactly right.
At the end.
It was incredible just hearing you go through this timeline and just kind of remembering the order that things happen, and how God moves. I want to go back for a minute. What happened how did Jackson die that night?
It was a cardiac event.
It was a cardiac thing.
Sudden heart failure.
Oh my gosh! And so you talked about his head being through a wall. That was from falling.
He had gone to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Cardiac event. So he just knees.
Something was happening. Went to the bathroom. Fell.
Yep.
Man. Holy smokes.
30 years old. And so for me, the perspective that I cannot stress enough to anybody, any guys, I guess, that watch this, is that you're not guaranteed the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, he had just turned 30. And I feel like that is what God was telling me, is it's like, if God is telling you to move on something, it really, I'm not trying to sound harsh or blunt, but like, it really doesn't matter how you feel, because you don't know how long you have. So if God puts a calling on your heart, you got to go and just trust he'll give you what you need to do it. And like, that's what I'm doing. And if I look back, a lot of people are like, dude, how are you functioning? And that's something I really want to address, is God has overhauled my life.
Yeah.
Throughout all this. Do I still struggle with anxiety and depression every single day? Every single day. It's not gone yet. But I believe wholeheartedly God's going to take it from me. I don't think anything he's made it clear, not that he can't use doctors, but for my specific situation, I believe that God is telling me anything man has to offer is not going to take it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get full glory for this. Mm-hmm. And when it happens, nobody's going to be able to point to anything other than me. And I'm going to have this testimony. And Goose, I've had dreams, man, about sharing my testimony on a stage.
Yeah.
And I believe it'll happen.
Yeah, that moment just seems to be getting closer and closer, doesn't it?
I believe what I believe. I journal every morning after I pray, and I believe that what the Lord is telling me is that one day you're going to wake up and it's all going to be gone. I may struggle to a degree, but not like I do now.
Yeah.
And so I guess the main things the Lord has done in my life to help me get to a place where I just pick myself up every day and keep going Number one is the whole premise of Men's Alliance, and you have to surround yourself with the right dudes.
Yeah.
That is non-negotiable because,
Yeah.
in my personal opinion, the number one way that God heals us through grief, from addiction, from trauma, from depression, it doesn't matter what it is. The number one way God heals us is through safe relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to be in relationships with people that fear God.
I think it's incredible to think about the fact that Jesus modeled this for us.
Yep.
Right? Before he started his ministry, he built a band of brothers. He went around and recruited 12 disciples.
Yep.
Right? He got these guys and he started traveling with them, fishing with them, hanging out with them. And then it's crazy that we would think we could do it different.
Right.
Right? It's like he modeled this, he set the example, and then I'm picturing myself from like 15 years ago, me listening to this podcast, hearing you, I would be thinking, yeah, that's just what he needed. I'm good.
Right.
I don't need that. Right? Like that was totally me. I would have thought, yeah, other guys might need a tribe, but I don't.
Exactly.
And like that right there, if you're thinking that, like you've already been caught in the snare.
Yep.
Right? Like Satan's already got you thinking you're good alone.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, none of us are good alone.
No.
Right? Like if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, that's just this guy, I'm good by myself, I don't need it. Dude, it's just a matter of time for you.
I would also say
You're not good.
Yeah, and I would also say if you are that guy and you think you're good, my encouragement to you would be buckle up. Mm-hmm. Because God will show you that you're not.
Or you think you're good because you're sitting on the sideline.
Yep.
Your helmet's off. You're sitting on the sideline thinking you're good.
Yep.
You're out of the game. You're not making a difference in the world. To get to fasten your chin strap and get on the field and start playing. That's where it's at. That's where real life exists, and that's where you need the tribe. I want to go to that day where you had your first panic attack, and talk a little bit more about how much work you were doing. You glossed over it real fast.
Yeah.
But I think this is important.
I was the epitome of burning the candle at both ends for years. So this was a daily routine for Bridger. Okay. I would get up at 4:00 in the morning. I would go to the gym at 5. I would run 5 miles at least and lift. Then I would go teach a full day at school. Then after school, I would go train athletes. My soccer company, I was training kids from 3rd grade all the way through college athletes. So I'd go train 2 to 3 athletes. Then I'd pop home, eat dinner, slug some beers so that I could cope with my son because I didn't know how to cope with being a dad. Eat, say hey to them, out the door for practice. I'd go back to the field,
back out,
and I would practice from 7 to 8:30, and then I would come home, drink some beer, unwind, go to sleep, repeat the next day. And then on the weekends, I was at games or tournaments all weekend long, and at the beach or wherever. I mean, I never took
travel team stuff.
Yeah, I never took a single second to rest because I am very all or nothing. And if I was not going all in and I was not the absolute best at it, I was a failure. And I realized that was a lie that I had been believing, that the enemy had ingrained in me from the time I was a kid, man. You got to be perfect or you're a failure. And so leading up to the panic attack, man, I had so many physical ailments and symptoms that are your body's way of letting you know, hey, dude, you're really stressed. I'm reaching a breaking point. But I didn't know.
Like what were a couple?
Tingling. So I remember my left foot would get like neuropathy, just kind of tingle. Back pain, joint pain, just overall fatigue.
Yeah.
Headaches. things like that. And so many people think of this as just like, oh, that's just a normal part of life. But a lot of times, your body will send weird physical symptoms as a warning sign of, hey, I'm trying to let you know something ain't right in here.
Yeah.
And I just ignored them and I think that's what most people do, right? We ignore until it's too late. And then your body's like, I'm shutting down. And it's no coincidence to me that the day after one of my biggest stressors was done, coaching, is when my body felt safe enough to shut down.
That's definitely a common thing, right? Like that's why so many men have their heart attacks on golf courses.
Yep.
Because that's when they're resting.
Yep.
Right? Like, so they've been crushing it all week at some big, event or project or seminar or thing they've been pouring into. And as soon as the event's over and they go to relax, that's when it's like our body, like the book titled, Body Keeps the Score.
Dude,
it's such a great title because it's true. Your body keeps score, and your body will do what you ask it to do for as long as it can. Right? If you ask it, here, hold this boulder, it's going to hold the boulder, and you're going to think, I'm fine. Look, see, I'm holding the boulder.
Yeah.
Which, that's true. You're holding it right up until the second when you stop.
Yeah. And
when you drop it, it's done.
It's why so many people have panic attacks when they're driving in a car.
Yep.
And the way I view it is it's like this. It's like when we're going through stress, whether it's emotional, relationship, traumatic stress, whatever it is, our brains, to protect themselves, right, will shut off. You have a right and a left side. It'll shut off parts of the brain, right? And so it's like your brain will literally build a dam for itself. So it'll build a wall in here. And it builds that wall so that you can't feel all the emotions and symptoms that come with that stress. Because it's a safety mechanism to allow you to just keep plowing ahead.
It's like triaging. It's like putting little tourniquets on different appendages.
Yep.
Right? It's like...
And it's always like clockwork. You talk to anybody that's gone through something like I have, there's probably a ton of MA guys that are watching this. I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah.
That's me. And it's like, as soon as that big stress relieves, it's like your brain says, okay, I can break this dam now. And the dam breaks and boom, everything comes flooding.
And I'll tell you one of the first things that gets that wall in your brain or that tourniquet in your brain, one of the first things that gets cut off that will start to die is our relationships.
Oh, yeah.
Our marriage. When guys aren't listening to, you talk about like, I don't have enough bandwidth to listen to my wife, to sit and deal with you describing your day.
Yeah.
There was no moment in that day where you were just sitting on the back porch talking to Tara.
I was a pressure cooker, man. I mean, I was. And, you talk about a marriage, that's a blessing of the last 4 years of my life that have been, in a lot of ways, absolute hell. But, my wife straight up told me, like, we would not be together if you hadn't gone through this, because the Lord has completely flipped my life upside down, but he's also flipped my life upside down in the sense that, like, the old me is gone. I am a completely different human. I have all new friends that are all in the church. A lot of them are MA guys. A lot of them are guys I went through freedom with. Like, they're my core. That's the only people I hang out with. I talk to them every single day on the phone.
Hey, men. Thrivent is proud to support Men's Alliance's goals, and financial advisor Dr. Andrew Newman, call sign Sage, is excited to help tribe members and those they care about make financial choices guided by their Christian values. Faith is what fuels Andrew. Does it fuel you too? Call Andrew today at 612-246-0725 so you can take care of yourself and those you care about, including your local tribe and Men's Alliance.
And I would say, like Jesus, he had his 12, but he also kind of had his...
He had his 3.
He had his 3 that he kind of took with him.
That's right, yeah.
And I would encourage every guy out there, have your 3.
Yeah.
It's good to have your group. I have my groups. But when it comes to making big decisions and it comes to being extra vulnerable, you got to shrink it down and
Totally.
have your core three.
Yeah.
And so, like, my core three guys, Iron, Spur, and Charles Bell, who's not call signed yet, but he's getting it this week at Vanguard Tribe.
Hey.
So, but those are my three guys that I talk to. I talked to Spur on the way here this morning. I talk to him every single day, and all of them are in different seasons of life. Iron is my nurturer friend because he's gone through the anxiety and depression too. Rick, or Spur rather, is my mentor. He's like a father figure to me because he's significantly older than I am, and he's been through the parenting. He's made the mistakes that he can steer me out of. And then Charles is like just my spiritual warrior. Dude knows the Bible in and out. He is so plugged in that, like, he's not going to tell me what I want to hear. He's going to tell me the accountability that I need to hear. And those are my three core guys. But then I have got other guys that I talk to all the time also. But when it comes to like the nitty gritty,
Yeah, that's good. Every man needs that. I'm glad you brought that up. Talk a little bit about the lifestyle changes you made, like career wise.
I mean, so I had to overhaul everything. And, you know, I'm going to keep harping on these guys, but like Iron played a huge role in this for me. You played a huge role in this for me. But it's like I gave up coaching. I sold my soccer training company. I don't hang out with any of the guys I used to hang out with. I overhauled my friend group. I got out of teaching.
Yeah.
And now I do.
Walk us through your day now. What's your day like now?
Now I do sales. So my dad owned a deck and fence company growing up. So I grew up installing with him, and I sell fences and patios.
What time do you get up, and what do you do first?
I get up it depends on the day, but usually I'm getting up pretty early. I try to get up before my kids, and the first thing I do is read my Bible. The very first thing, I read my Bible and or watch a sermon, something like that, and I do a lot of nervous system regulation stuff. So I will read my Bible, and during my prayer time, it's like meditation. So I'm doing breath work.
I was getting ready to say, like, when you talk about meditation, you're focusing on some breathing.
Deep breath work. So inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 8.
Exhale for 8.
You can do box
So
breathing.
you got the rectangle.
Yeah.
Rectangle breathing.
That's what works for me. So I'll do breathing exercises, and I spend a lot of time praying, particularly in the mornings. My prayer time is me listening. I'll just say, God, I am listening to whatever you want to tell me. And what I believe, I pray it like this. I'm like, Lord, please, in the name of Jesus, block out the voice of the enemy and block out my own thoughts. And I'm just going to listen. And what comes into my mind, I'm going to write down. And then whatever I write down, I'm like, is this biblical or not? 10 out of 10 times it is. And I'm like, that's what God's trying to tell me today. So like my journal this morning, I heard things like, I'm going to heal you. Like, your breakthrough is coming. Keep pouring into, I won't say his name, but guys that I'm coaching currently. Just things like that. So it's a lot of breath work. The mornings are a lot slower. Get the kids out the door. I go run estimates, and then I get home. And when I get home, I do more breath work every day. So I am way more focused, dude, on like relaxing.
Yeah.
I am very intentional about rest now. And like on the weekends, I have to tell my wife, like, at least one day, usually Sunday, I don't want to do anything. Like, the family's just staying at home.
It's funny how much I'm laughing because of a conversation I had the other day. It's funny how much we have to go through in life,
dude,
before we realize how important that commandment about the Sabbath is.
Yeah.
We actually, it was Phoenix at our staff meeting yesterday, and or 2 days ago, and he was sharing about how we tend to look at the 10 commandments and view the one about the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy, as like not as important as the other 9.
Yep.
Like, this one's a suggestion.
Yep.
And then you go through as much as you've been through, and you realize, hold on, this might be the most important one.
I think
if I don't get this one right,
well, I mean, dude,
I got to take a day for nothing.
And I think so many of us out there get caught up in like your prayer life is awesome, and it's great to pray to the Lord and show gratitude and things like that. But it's so important to just shut up and listen too. And if you don't rest, you can't listen.
Yeah.
And a phrase, I don't know who told me this, but I say it all the time. It's like, if the enemy can't make you bad, he'll make you busy.
Oh, yeah, that's so good.
Because if you're busy, you can't slow down enough God might be up in heaven, you're crying out to God, God, what are you telling me to do? What are you telling me to do? And he's like, if you would just slow down, you would hear me.
You're reminding me of the book. I don't know if you've read this one. You probably have, but we should definitely talk about it. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. That's a fantastic book that a tribesman, Bearcat, recommended. And it really highlights that Jesus was never busy.
No. And he walked
Or he never
everywhere.
hurried. That's what I mean. I'm sorry. He never hurried.
Nope.
He did a lot of things, but he did every single one of them with all his heart at that moment. He wasn't like harried and thinking of 5 different things he has to do and rushed. He was always, I'm going to do one thing, and then I'm going to go pray, and then I'm going to go nap.
Yep.
And then I'm going to go for a walk, and then I'm going to do another thing.
Yep.
And you're like, wait a minute, look at how we're living our lives.
Yep.
Am I following his example?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think I've told this to you before. I know I've probably said this. When I think about our mental health, I think of a paper plate at Thanksgiving, right? And so like all the stuff we put on on our plates, on our minds, and you've got family, you're a husband, you're a dad, then you got your job, right? But then we've got our physical health. So you were getting up and running 5 miles and lifting.
Yep.
And then then you did your job all day, but then you started a side hustle business that was like a whole nother full-time job that you would do after work and then go back to after dinner. And you think about that plate at Thanksgiving. Like if I hear your schedule and think about it, I'm like, your plate sounds to me like it's like 150% full. Like it's, how much would you say percentage-wise, think about like what you used to do and think about what you do now. How much would you say you've gotten, you've scraped off your plate?
I mean, at least half.
Yeah.
At least 50% of it. I mean, because
that's amazing.
I had to think. I had to, man. I couldn't function if I didn't.
Of all the stuff you were doing, imagine like getting rid of half.
I know.
And there's some stuff that you can't get rid of, right?
Well,
you're not getting rid of husband, father, and
job,
and a job of some sort. But even within the job, you found a job that was less stressful.
Yeah, and I think too that like for so many guys out there, it is stressful enough just to be a husband and a dad, particularly if your kids are young like mine, and work a job. Like there are still days I'm like, I can't cope with how needed I am. You know what I mean? And it's like, but then we oftentimes will feed into this lie, well, I just need to do more to take my mind, to distract myself. Yeah. And then I think the enemy uses that, well, do more, even if it's good things. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Even if it's all these different things you're doing for the church or whatever. Yeah. The enemy's like, good, I can take you away from your wife. I can take you away from your kids. And I can stress you out so that when you come home, you're in a bad mood. And it's like, you really have to like, just minimize, man.
So that day you went to the ER and you were saying how the doctor presented you with two options.
Yeah.
When you think about it from this perspective we're talking about now, both of those options were adding 2 things to your plate.
Yep.
Right? You can either add medicine or you can add counseling. And I would say both of those things are good. And I would have said you could do both. Or a third option is both.
Yep.
But what wasn't presented is you can also take half the stuff off your plate. Right. So sometimes the answer is don't put another thing on your plate, even a good thing.
Yep.
Right. Like we're like, guys, like, man, I should get counseling. I should exercise more. I should do. Right. Maybe the answer is, what can you stop doing?
What can you stop? Or And, you know, like for me, like God is, I really feel super strongly that the Lord has told me to like, and maybe we can transition into this, go with this coaching thing.
Yeah.
And he's
Let's talk about it.
and he's like, I want you to do it now. But something that Pastor Joel, some incredible advice, shout out Pastor Joel, that he gave me was like, God will put a calling on your life, but a lot of times we will get so excited about the calling that we'll jump ahead of God. And so we'll go in 100 miles an hour on it. And I even talked to you about coaching, and you were like, you should coach 1 or 2 guys right now.
Yeah.
Not 10.
Yeah.
1 or 2. Like, you feel the calling, but let's not forget, we have a wife and kids and a job. So it's like, yes, you have this calling, but it's dangerous for me to go in and say, all right, I'm going to start coaching 20 guys right now.
Dude, so I totally did this right when I got, because I was so excited about, you know, I started my own coaching business right when I retired and got out of the Air Force. And within a couple months, within about 4 months after getting out of the Air Force, I realized I was working more than I'd ever worked. And I was coaching about 7 on average, about 7 clients a day. I was like about to burn out. I was like, what? I realized I was like, I'm not very good at this retirement thing.
Right.
This is not how it's supposed to be. Right. And so then I had to do it too and I got myself into that because it was what I wanted to do, because it was fun, because it was exciting. I enjoyed it. Every single client, I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But it just shows how, as humans, we can do too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
And we've got to keep scaling it back, and don't let it take over other areas, and keep your focus on the marriage and all these important things that we know, but then we slowly drift, you know, and then we got to get reminded again. And that's part of what comes from having that band of brothers.
Yeah.
The guys that remind you, hey, dude, you're getting way too busy. I haven't even talked to you in 2 weeks.
Yes. And or just a guy that can tell you like, hey dude, like I've been there, and like the reason you're trying to stay so busy is because you're running from something.
So I wanted to say that too. Let's go to that. You were talking about, you know, you'd come home, you'd eat dinner, you'd go back to work. And I think there's a component of this that is, you said, I didn't know how to be a dad. I didn't know how to handle my son.
Nope.
And so, but you knew how to coach soccer.
Yep.
And so we want to go do the thing that we can win at.
Yep.
And
we don't want to do the hard
many
thing.
men, the thing that they don't think they can win at, the hardest thing is their marriage. They're like, I don't know how to listen to my wife. I don't know how to manage that relationship. So I'll just work longer hours.
Yep.
I'll just go to the place where I can win.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's totally it. Is I didn't even realize I was running from my problems, and I didn't even realize that my problem with alcohol was just because it was like, well, this alcohol allows me to be the dad that I want to be. That I didn't feel capable of doing, like the calm, patient. That I didn't feel capable of doing without being intoxicated. And I would say, man, that's one of the biggest problems I particularly see within men in this society, and even within my friend group, is like guys are so busy.
Yeah.
And I'll even see like neighbors and stuff and friends or whatever. I'm not calling out anybody in particular, but it's just like even on the weekend, dude, they're going 100 miles an hour Saturday and Sunday.
Yep.
You know, and I'm like, and the way I view it now is I'm like, what are you teaching your children? You're teaching your children you have to go 100 miles an hour. You know what I mean? That's the norm. You have, or you're not successful. You got to go, 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 go. So then we're raising sons or daughters to grow up to where they don't know how to be still. They don't know how to take the Sabbath seriously because all they've known is, I got to go 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
That's the norm.
We work hard all week so that we can go harder on the weekend.
And if you don't go hard, you're lazy.
Yeah.
That's the lie. If I'm not doing a million things, I'm just being lazy. I can't just sit still and watch a game. That's lazy. I got to go out in the yard and do something. Like, and I just think it's such a lie that
it is a lie.
That is burning people out. That's ruining marriages. You know, that's raising kids in a way that's just, in my personal opinion, setting them up for failure. And so yeah, I guess we'll just transition into the coaching thing.
Yeah, let's do it. So this is exciting.
Yeah.
This is exciting. And I guess we could go ahead and just say we're going to release this podcast whenever we're flipping on the light, right?
Yeah.
So really excited about what is happening here with, and let me just back up and say this. Part of that conversation you were alluding to is I had a guy in Men's Alliance contact me and say, hey, I want to get into coaching. Would you ever be open to the idea of like offering like Men's Alliance coaching?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, that's a big idea, and that's very cool. And then another guy asked me the same thing. And then, like a month later, another guy. And then like 2 months later, another guy. And you start to like, okay.
Right.
I wake up, pay attention. I had 6 guys, 6 men from Men's Alliance mentioned this idea to me over probably about a 6-month period at least. But it was just always there. I just felt like God was continuing to nudge and poke in this direction. Mm-hmm. And then, you were kind of leading that charge of like, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I want to do. And I've always been a big believer in everything that we go through in life. God brings us through things so that we can turn around and help others go through the same thing.
So that's why when you asked me what would you name this podcast, I would say Purpose and Pain. Because, for me, all the things I've gone through the last 4 years that haven't worked, right? All the doctors I've seen, all the therapies I've tried, all the medications and supplements, all the blood work, all the scans, everything. When I asked God, Lord, why? This is what he's told me. He said, it hasn't worked for you, but that doesn't mean it won't work for somebody that you're working with. And so God's like, I had to allow you to go through it. And even though it didn't work, the amount of knowledge I have gained.
Yeah, you've become a bit of an expert.
Because I love
medications and
I love learning
treatments. Yeah.
And so it's like every med I'm on, I know the ins and outs of it. I know exactly how it works in your brain. I know exactly what the startup side effects are. I know what the withdrawal is. All the therapies, I've experienced them. So I know if someone's like, if I suggest maybe you should try doing EMDR, here's exactly how it works. Here's exactly how neurofeedback works. Here's the exact blood work I personally think you should go get done. Let's rule that out, right? Here is, and I have all these doctors. I got a Rolodex of resources now.
Yeah, you've got resources.
You need a doctor, go see this guy, he's awesome. You need a functional medicine doctor, go see this lady, she's awesome. And so the Lord is like, I've allowed you to experience all this for the knowledge and the resources. And it didn't work for you, but all this knowledge, you're going to be able to be an expert coach now and help guys when they're asking questions. You're going to have an answer, and you're going to be able to look every single guy that you sit across from in the eye and be able to say, I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah. And I think that's what's really cool about what we're doing. So as we launch Battlefield Coaching, it's men who have already fought that battle.
Yeah.
It's men who have been on that battlefield. Battlefields like anxiety, depression, addiction, divorce. We've got a lot of different battlefields that a lot of different MA men have been on that others are currently fighting on. So that's why I'm so excited about this. So with Battlefield Coaching, the idea is matching tribesmen with tribesmen who have been on that battlefield. They've gotten a coaching certification, and they've got insurance. So we're providing qualified, legitimate coaches, not just great dudes, but great dudes who have been trained and are ready to help others. Just being a resource to match the guy with the coach.
Yep.
Right. That's what Men's Alliance Battlefield Coaching is. And yeah, you're one of our first coaches.
That's right.
Which is really exciting.
Yeah. So, I mean, and for me, a lot of guys, I work with several guys in the chapel now, a couple of which are MA guys. And, these guys have actually, and this is not to toot my own horn, but it's to almost give tribesmen confidence.
That's right.
To do coaching versus maybe counseling. Right. Because, you have a licensed counselor, I guess.
Yeah, let's talk about the difference.
So a licensed counselor, obviously, you have all the schooling for it. You've got all the degrees. You can go through insurance, which is a huge plus because you just pay a copay. In my opinion, the downside specifically for MA is you have to be licensed in every state that you counsel in, right? Is that I think?
To accept insurance.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a pro of coaching.
Yeah.
I can coach anybody in any state, and I'm still certified. And for me, the reason, like, I came to you, Goose, I probably got more from you than any licensed counselor I went to, and it's just different. I don't know how to explain it other than it's just different when, like, you're talking to somebody that just can, like, build you up but just understands. And so, like, these guys that I'm working with, they have canceled with their licensed therapist, and they're working with me as a coach. And I've asked for feedback specifically for this podcast so that I can tell the guys out there. It's like when I ask these guys, what made you cancel with your therapist to come work with me, right? And they'll say every single time the answer is because you've lived it. And they're like, so many of these therapists, they have all the book knowledge, but they haven't experienced it like you have.
Yeah.
They haven't experienced the trauma. They haven't experienced the severe anxiety and depression. They're like, when you have lived it, these guys tell me, like, you can just relate on a whole nother level.
And see, that's a great way to articulate the difference. I like that, and I've been through the schooling for to be a licensed counselor. I've got the degree, and I did all the training and all the hours, and I was working on my licensure for Virginia, building up all those hours as a counselor in residence. Mm-hmm. When I realized that the whole counseling model is based on listening about a past.
Yeah.
It's all past. Everything is about your past, and everything is listening to this person about their past. And so many people, they reach a point where they want more and they need more. Mm-hmm. And what I've learned, the way I articulate the difference between counseling and coaching is helping you develop a plan for your future.
Yep.
That's what coaching is. Counseling is focusing on past hurt, past pain, past trauma. Coaching is, let's come up with a plan together for how you're going to cope next week.
Exactly.
That's a coach, right? Counseling is, tell me about your childhood. Coaching is, let's come up with a plan together for next weekend.
Yep.
Right? When you're confronted with your trigger.
Yep.
Next weekend, what's your plan? How are you going to cope with that? How are you going to move forward? What are your goals? Right? It's a lot of goal setting and stuff. So I realized that, and it was funny, I had a breakfast with my mentor who had helped me through my internship, my practicum, who had been a mental health counselor for over 40 years. And I just said, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I don't want to be in the business of diagnosing mental health disorders.
Right.
And that's what I was doing. I had to, after every appointment, I'm filling out a DSM-5 diagnosis.
Yeah, you're required to have a diagnosis.
To put down something.
Yeah, you have to in order to get insurance to cover it.
Even if it's something, generic, you put something down. And I'm just like, man, this just isn't what I wanted to do. And he's the one who said, have you ever thought about just doing coaching? Why don't you just switch lanes? And I literally had never thought about it until that breakfast. Shout out to Whisperer, Mike Flynn, on that for getting me to change lanes from counseling to coaching. And so I believe that coaching is what more men need. than counseling. And I do think there's a time and place for counseling, especially for people with severe mental health disorders, right? Bipolar type schizophrenia. There's a lot of, major depressive disorders where a person, they haven't been able to get out of bed for over 2 weeks. That person, I would say, you need a mental health counselor. You're not even ready for coaching yet. Right. And so you've got to already be coming into coaching mentally healthy enough to be able to need a plan for the future. Right. And so when you get to that place, and for a lot of people, maybe they needed some counseling for a season, and now they're kind of ready to move to coaching. Right. Some people, they're just, all they need is coaching. And so I think that's the difference that people should understand. And what we're going to offer is coaching, right? So we're making it real clear up front on the website, like, hey, this is not mental health diagnosing disorders counseling. This is coaching. This is going to be guys who have been there and done that. And they're not just going to listen. They're going to listen, but then they're going to also speak into your life and say, bro, that's a bad idea what you're doing. Here's what you need to think about. Here's what you need to consider. Taking more stuff off your plate. Things like that I think all the counselors in America for generations have been trained in this, cognitive behavioral therapy tradition of never give advice, which is extremely frustrating when you're listening and you're paying for sessions from a counselor that won't give you any advice. And you're like, tell me what should I do? And they go, what do you think you should do?
Exactly. Or how does it make you feel?
You're like, okay, that's useful maybe to ask once. Here's what I think I should do. What do you think about that? I don't know. What do you think about that? You're like, am I getting anything from this? Right. So a coach is going to straight up tell you, that's a terrible idea.
Well, and that is, I think that's why, Goose, I liked working with you, because right, and this is so full circle for me, right? If we think back, I come from a teaching background, so master's in education. I come from a coaching background. And God's like, no, I'm going to use that.
Isn't that awesome?
And then I go through the mental health slump, and God's like, I'm going to use these to show you your purpose on this earth. And you're still going to coach, because, it's cut me to the core to give up coaching because I loved coaching. God's like, no, you're still going to coach, just not the way you think you were.
Oh, man.
And so you're going to coach, but in a different avenue. And, I think for men in particular, and this is, not to say that women wouldn't love coaching either. I'm just speaking for myself because I'm a guy. And it's like, for men, like, you need that coach, not like,
coach.
not the like. For me, I didn't need to be like coddled.
Right.
I needed to be encouraged and held accountable, and like I needed help with, here is our action steps. Because I don't know what action steps to take. Right. All right, well, let's write them out.
You think about it from this perspective, right? Like, you would never coach an athlete by just asking them, what do you think you should do?
Right.
You would, and think about financial coaching, right? Imagine going to a financial coach and you're like, here's my finances, help me with this. And they just say, well, what do you think you should do? Right. But when it comes to, so when we get a personal trainer or a financial coach or whatever, we're looking for advice from somebody who's been there. But then when it comes to mental health, so many people are going to counselors who are just saying, well, what do you think? Right. And it's kind of like, I think we've hit a point like in our culture really where that started to shift, and people are like, I've had a lot of clients who have said things to me over the years like, man, I've seen a counselor. I've been seeing this counselor for the past 4 years, and you've already helped me more in 3 weeks.
Dude, exactly what the guys I'm working with.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of the difference between counseling and coaching.
Well, I think, too, with coaching, and it may be more if you've got like some serious trauma in the past, which I think all of us do. But like, I think it is okay for a coach to hear about your past a little bit.
Sure.
Because like
it's not like a we can't talk about it.
Yeah. I like hearing about a guy's past, because then I'm like, okay, dude, so this happened in the past, and it's what's shaping your behaviors now.
Yes.
So how can we identify this problem from the past, change that thought pattern, and then set goals to move past it?
Yeah, that's right.
And so, I mean, I think it's going to be awesome.
So you have it's incredible too, because not only were you a soccer coach, but you're a teacher.
Yeah.
You got a master's in education.
Yeah.
So you're the teacher and the coach, but you've also been through severe panic attacks.
Yeah.
And that's something I've witnessed panic attacks. Mm-hmm. I've seen people having them. Mm-hmm. Multiple occasions, men and women. I've seen people having panic attacks, and I've seen them enough to be able to tell people you're not having a heart attack, right? Because everybody thinks they're dying.
Yep.
You're not having a heart attack, but I haven't had one.
Right.
Right, and you've had them, so you're going to be able to help guys who have had panic attacks from a totally different way than I ever could.
Yeah, or just severe trauma, right? You know, I ask God, why did I have to be there when my buddy died? And I feel like the Lord's like, because I'm going to put people in front of you that are going to need somebody that can say, I know exactly how you feel, and here's what I did to kind of claw out of it. Or let me rephrase, here's what I'm still doing to try to heal from it. You know what I mean? But I think that is the key, and I think that's the key with a lot of the guys that we have kind of doing this pilot group of coaching. Is like we've all been through the areas that we're coaching in, and I really believe that is what's going to be the differentiator specifically for Men's Alliance battlefield coaching. Is it's like I can guarantee any man watching this video, you cannot sit across from me and tell me anything that I can't look them in the eye and say, I've been there, I know exactly how you feel. Like nothing.
Yeah.
Literally nothing. And so that to me is freeing in the sense that it's taken 4 years. And I'm like, I finally feel like God is answering why. But it took 4 years.
That's how long ago that first panic attack was.
It's been over 4 years.
A 4-year journey.
And God is saying, here's why. Because I have this calling on your life, but I have to completely break you down before I can build you up to do this calling. It's like, you know, in the Bible, wineskins, right? You can't put fresh wine in an old wineskin because it'll burst, right? So you have to put it in new. So it's like the way, I guess a better way of wording it would be, if our life represents a cup, right? God is like, I have to completely empty you out before I can pour back in how I want you to live your life and go in this calling. Because if I leave this much of the old you in the cup, well, it's just like leaving the door cracked for the enemy. You know what I mean? And so I think the last 4 years has been, and you know, this might be controversial, but part of me feels like the Lord sent the storm, just like he did with Jonah. You know what I mean? And I also believe the enemy sends storms before breakthrough, and the enemy sees what he saw this coming, and he's like, I got to stop that. You know what I mean? But I really feel like the Lord was like, Corey, I have to allow you to go through this. Because I have to break you down. Because something really important to note, before this, man, I was the teacher that the kid with anxiety, that kid's a expletive. You know, suck it up, dude. Like, suck it up. You got anxiety, so you can't come to class. Like, give me a break. And now when I have lived with anxiety and depression, that can't just be prayed away. Right?
I think that's important, right? Is like, if you're dealing with anxiety or anything, depression, and you're praying for God to heal it or take it away, and it's not going away, that does not mean that you're not praying right or you're 100%. Not praying enough. Right?
If you do mental health coaching certifications through Light University, the American Association of Christian Counseling,
or ICCI,
one of the first things you learn is one of the biggest problems in the church today is that we majorly over spiritualize mental health. Majorly.
Right here. I was thinking of this book, and I'm like, wait, I think it's beside me. Why do Christians shoot their wounded?
Yeah.
This is a phenomenal book by Dr. Carlson on this topic of so many Christians, so many churches are telling their wounded, hey, you just need to pray more. Hey, you're not taking this to God, right?
Or repent. What sin do you need to repent of?
Which is like, it's like when people say that, I'm like, have you even read the New Testament? Right? Like Paul,
his whole life was trauma, dude.
Over half the New Testament had an affliction that we don't know what it was, but we're told he had an affliction, and he prayed to God to take it away. And God said, I'm not going to take it away, but my grace will be sufficient for you. Right? So if God didn't take away Paul's affliction, then why should any of us think that him not taking away ours is a sign of us being bad or sinful? It's like, no, that's not how it works.
No.
Even Paul kept his affliction.
Yeah, I mean, prime example of that would be like Job's friends.
That's right.
You know what I mean? They're like, what sin have you committed that God's punishing you? Because, dude, that's something I struggled with for so long. It's like, man, God is just, you're punishing me. I'm in trouble. And to an extent, there may be some discipline involved in this for the life I was living. You know what I mean? But I just want to say to MA guys that are struggling with mental health, like, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's because of sin or a lack of repentance or you don't have enough faith or you're not praying right. And I really think a lot of, and might catch flack for this, but I think a lot of churches out there, man, that's their viewpoint on mental health. And you take a person's mental health and you just make it 10 times worse.
Yeah, it makes it worse.
And so that's another thing that I think will be really beneficial of this battlefield coaching is like, you're going to have guys that have lived it that can be like, hey, dude, like, it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing anything wrong. Job did nothing wrong to deserve his suffering.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it could just be that God has a calling on your life, but he's got to break some things first before he can build you back up.
There it is.
So
BattlefieldCoaching.com. You can check out the brand new website. Go to BattlefieldCoaching.com. Find a Men's Alliance tribesman who's been there, done that, and now he's coaching others through the battlefield. And Bridger will be on there.
I'm on there.
Well, thank you for sharing your purpose in the pain.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks for having me on.
And how this has all come full circle for you. And I know that so many men can relate to your story and what you've shared. And I hope that they are encouraged by it.
Likewise.
To find out more about what we're doing and to join us on our mission, go to men'salliancetribe.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a 5-star review.